Ever walked by an old building and thought, there's no way we built that in the 1800s? Massive stone arches, sky-high domes, perfect symmetry, and then, oddly, half the building's buried underground. It doesn't make sense. And you're not alone in thinking that. All over the internet, people are asking the same question. What if history's biggest empire has been completely erased? They call it the Tartarian Empire, a lost global civilization that supposedly built much of the world's grandest architecture. Capitol domes, star forts, giant train stations, all of it. And then, it vanished. Wiped out by a mud flood, they say, covered up by governments, rewritten by historians. All that remains are the buildings and the mystery. The theory has exploded online. TikTokers film buried doorways. Redditors share old maps marked Tartaria. YouTubers dive into city plans, world fairs, and ancient tech. And while some call it absurd, others aren't so sure. So, is the Tartarian Empire real history, or just a beautiful lie? Let's find out. Before we dive deeper into the secrets of Tartaria, a quick note. I'm on a mission to reach 1,000 subs by the end of the year, and your support makes all the difference. If you enjoy uncovering forbidden histories and hidden mysteries, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. All right, back to the mystery. Before it became a viral mystery, Tartaria was just a name on old maps. From the 13th to the 19th century, European cartographers labeled a massive stretch of land in Asia as Tartary or Tartaria. It covered parts of what we now know as Russia, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Siberia. Basically, a giant unknown zone to the west. To Europeans, this region was mysterious. They didn't know who lived there or how it was governed, so they lumped it all under one name, Tartary. It wasn't an empire. It wasn't unified. It was more of a placeholder, like writing, "Here be dragons." There were real people there, of course. Nomadic tribes, Mongol khanates, and scattered cultures with rich histories. But the term Tartary didn't refer to any one nation. It was a vague geographic label used out of convenience and ignorance. Over time, as maps got more accurate and Russia expanded eastward, Tartary disappeared from mainstream use. But the name never fully died. And centuries later, it would be revived not by historians, but by internet theorists asking one big question. What if Tartaria wasn't a blank spot on the map, but the center of a forgotten civilization? So, where did this theory actually come from? The modern idea of a hidden Tartarian empire didn't come from ancient texts or buried ruins. It came from the internet. But its roots go a bit deeper. In the late 20th century, a Russian mathematician named Anatoly Fomenko introduced something called the new chronology. He argued that world history, as we know it, was completely wrong. According to him, most of it was made up during the Renaissance to hide the true greatness of ancient Russia, or what he believed was Tartaria. These ideas stayed mostly in Russia until the 2010s, when online communities picked them up, especially in the West. On YouTube and Reddit, users started reinterpreting architectural styles, old maps, and historical photos. Platforms like TikTok later supercharged the theory with short viral clips showing half-buried buildings and maps labeled Tartaria. Over time, the theory evolved. It stopped being just about Russian history and became something bigger. A lost civilization that spanned continents, built impossible architecture, and was covered up by modern powers. It's not based on academic research. It's built on aesthetic patterns, internet speculation, and a deep mistrust of official history. At the heart of the Tartarian theory is one bold claim. A global, highly advanced civilization once ruled the world, and we've been lied to about it. Here's what believers say. First, Tartaria was real, not just a region on a map, but a powerful empire that spanned continents. They believe it left behind grand architecture that's been falsely credited to more recent builders. Think of the US Capitol, the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, or railway stations in India and Australia. To Tartaria supporters, these weren't just well-designed buildings, they're evidence. Second, the technology was ahead of its time. They point to strange towers, spires and domes, claiming these structures harnessed wireless electricity, free energy flowing through the air. It sounds like science fiction, but believers argue Nikola Tesla was on the verge of rediscovering Tartaria's secrets before his research mysteriously vanished. Then there's the mud flood event. Many claim a cataclysmic disaster, a global flood of mud, buried entire cities, covering first floors and wiping the empire off the map. Today, any sunken doorway or half-buried window becomes a clue in the Tartaria puzzle. Lastly, they say there's been a massive cover-up, that modern governments and historians have conspired to erase Tartaria's existence, rewriting timelines, destroying artifacts, and brainwashing generations. It's part ancient mystery, part sci-fi, and 100% internet-fueled. One of the most bizarre and most viral pieces of the Tartaria puzzle is the mud flood theory. Believers say that sometime in the 1800s, a mysterious global disaster occurred. Not an earthquake or war, but a massive flood of mud that swept across cities and buried entire civilizations. According to this theory, buildings that appear sunken, with windows or doors below street level, aren't just quirky design choices. They're proof that whole floors were swallowed by this event. Photos from cities like St. Petersburg, Salt Lake City, Paris, and Istanbul are often used as evidence. People point to stairs leading down to basements that look like former main entrances, or windows sitting just inches above the sidewalk. They ask, why would anyone build like that, unless something covered it up later? Supporters also argue that early photographs from the 1800s show empty cities, grand buildings but no people. To them, this means these cities were inherited, not built. The mud flood wiped out the original population, and others moved in later. Of course, historians have simpler explanations: urban development, changing street levels, and photographic exposure times. But to Tartaria believers, every buried window is another forgotten chapter of a lost world. Walk through almost any major city in the world, and you'll see buildings that seem too grand, too complex, too perfect to be from the 1800s. That's the foundation of what believers call the Tartarian architecture argument. They point to massive stone structures with domes, columns, arches, and impossibly detailed carvings. Buildings like the US Capitol, the Royal Exhibition Building in Melbourne, or ornate train stations in India and Eastern Europe. These weren't small projects. They required engineering, tools, and manpower that, according to believers, the 19th century couldn't have provided. One of the biggest mysteries in the theory is the star fort. These are complex, symmetrical forts built in a star shape, found on almost every continent. From Italy to Japan to the US, believers say these forts couldn't have been independently designed by different cultures. To them, it's clear. They were all part of the same empire. Then there's the World's Fairs. These temporary cities, like the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, featured breathtaking old-world architecture that was supposedly built in just a few months, and then torn down. Tartaria theorists argue, why destroy something so beautiful unless you were hiding something? Historians, of course, have answers. Classical revival styles were popular, global influence was common, and many old-looking buildings were built quickly using wood and plaster. But the theory doesn't live or die on facts. It thrives on visual awe, and that's what makes it so convincing to many. Now let's talk reality. Despite its viral popularity, the Tartarian Empire theory doesn't hold up under serious historical or scientific scrutiny. First, There's no credible evidence that Tartaria was ever a unified empire. Historians agree that Tartary was simply a catch-all term on old European maps for unknown parts of Asia. It was never a political entity. No Tartarian government, language, culture, or military is documented in any real way. There are no artifacts, no texts, no records. Second, the so-called Tartarian architecture is easily explained. The 19th century was full of skilled architects and builders who revived classical European styles. With the rise of industrial manufacturing, it became easier to mass-produce intricate parts, columns, facades, domes, that mimicked ancient styles. As for the mud flood, there are practical explanations. Over time, cities raised street levels due to new construction, layers of pavement, or even efforts to prevent flooding. That's why older windows or doors may appear buried. It's not global catastrophe, it's city planning. Even star forts aren't that mysterious. They were a military design trend from the 15th to 18th centuries, used all over the world due to their strategic advantage, not because of a secret empire. And those haunting, empty photos of cities? Early cameras required long exposure times, so moving people didn't show up. It's not a population mystery. It's photography 101. The theory is fascinating, but when you dig into the details, the story starts to crumble. So if the Tartarian Empire isn't real, why do so many people believe it? Part of the appeal is aesthetic. The architecture is stunning. The visuals, old maps, symmetrical forts, buried buildings, feel like a puzzle just waiting to be solved. It's fun. It's mysterious. It looks like there's a secret history hiding in plain sight. But beyond the visuals, there's something deeper at play: mistrust. People are increasingly skeptical of governments, schools, and media. When you feel like you've been lied to in the past, it's easy to believe you're being lied to again, even about history. There's also a hunger for alternative narratives. Tartaria offers an exciting rewrite of our world. It turns everyday buildings into ancient relics. It turns you into an explorer, uncovering truths others missed. It's empowering. And finally, the theory taps into a broader pattern seen in other conspiracies, like Flat Earth, Lost Cities, or QAnon. It says, you're not crazy. Everyone else is just asleep. For many, believing in Tartaria isn't just about buildings or mud. It's about questioning the official story and imagining a more mysterious, magical version of the world. In many ways, Tartaria is less of a historical theory and more of a modern myth. Like Atlantis or El Dorado, it speaks to a deep human desire. The idea that we once had something greater, something beautiful and advanced, and we lost it. Tartaria offers mystery, grandeur, and tragedy, all in one story. It doesn't need hard evidence to survive. It thrives on wonder, unanswered questions, and beautiful ruins. Whether it's true or not, the legend of Tartaria taps into something timeless: our fascination with forgotten worlds, and our belief that the past might be bigger than we're told. So, was there really a Tartarian empire? The short answer: no, not in the way the internet says. There was no global civilization erased by mud and conspiracy. No hidden technology. No mass cover-up by historians. But that doesn't mean the fascination is worthless. The Tartaria theory reminds us how much we crave mystery. It shows the power of architecture, imagery, and storytelling in shaping our view of the past. And it warns us how quickly fiction can blur into fact when shared online. At the end of the day, it's okay to explore theories, to question, to wonder. But real discovery means going deeper, not just following clicks and hashtags. So, the next time you pass a grand old building with a sunken doorway or a strange spire, pause for a moment. Ask questions. Be curious. But remember, not every mystery is a cover-up. Some are just history, waiting to be understood. This has been Sealed Secrets, If you enjoyed this journey into forbidden histories and chilling mysteries, hit that subscribe button. We've got more hidden files waiting to be opened, because the truth is never where they say it is.